Yuuji is an ugly, pathetic boy whose confidence is as low as my IQ. From a young age, life has been slapping him around like a rag doll. His ugly, useless, and pathetic excuse for a father bullied him for not having the same talents as his sister, who brought wealth to their family. The tragedy struck, leaving Yuuji an orphan. Instead of finding solace, he was taken in by evil individuals who trained him to become one of the world's most formidable elite soldiers. His journey, however, is one that's truly heartbreaking to witness. His parents consistently overlooked him because he was a pathetic loser and couldn't match the talent of his sister, Kazuki. From a young age, Kazuki's sketches captivated their father, and her talent eventually surpassed even that of renowned artists. This led to her winning numerous art competitions and her work selling for millions of dollars. Growing up, Yuuji found himself distancing from his sister due to the teasing he endured whenever they were together. Kazuki, however, recognized the void in her brother's heart and made it her mission to fill it. She became his sole companion, teaching him even the simplest things like throwing balls. Their time together became Yuuji's source of happiness. Kazuki supported Yuuji through every challenge. She believed that he had extraordinary potential and she encouraged him to pursue his dreams. This motivates him to follow in her footsteps. Despite Yuuji's struggles with art, Kazuki cherished even his imperfect drawings, using them to uplift his confidence. Sadly, their father persistently ridiculed Yuuji's efforts, leading Yuuji to destroy his own creations out of shame. One day, Yuuji encountered a mysterious man named Kirihara Rei in his home, who offered him a piece of chocolate from a fascinating box, while Yuuji's father dismissed him as an embarrassment. However, the mysterious man responded with a smile. As time went by, Kazuki started hiding her talent and even cancelled her art studies in Paris. Instead, she chose to bond with her brother by reading manga together, believing it would help him make friends and avoid the loneliness she feared for him. Determined not to see Yuuji follow in their father's footsteps, Kazuki encouraged him to socialize. Meanwhile, her occasional paintings became the family's main source of income. Yuuji's mistreatment by their family worsened over time. His family would go out to eat in fancy restaurants every night. Yuuji was left with only hard and stale bread to eat. To make it edible, he had to soak it with water. When Kazuki discovered this, she urged him to eat from the fridge instead. But Yuuji feared his parents' anger if he did so. Kazuki's heart sank as she realized the extent of Yuuji's mistreatment, leading her to confront their parents. But sadly, nothing changed. Their father's disdain remained evident, while their mother began avoiding him openly so not to get on his father's bad side. One evening, Yuuji returned home late and shared with his sister that he'd been out playing with a friend. Kazuki's curiosity sparked as she asked if the friend was a girl. While Yuuji confirmed this, he also expressed concern that Kazuki might bully his new friend. Kazuki explained that she was simply trying to ensure Yuuji's friends were suitable for him, but grew upset at his habit of befriending girls. As her jealousy intensified, she scolded Yuuji, insisting that he needed her permission to befriend girls. She promised him that she would find a suitable girl for him one day. Kazuki usually lived life on her own terms, with their parents bending to her wishes. However, deep down, Yuuji harbored a fear of her dominant side, viewing her almost like a deity rather than a mere mortal. Despite this fear, he knew he could rely on her. Tragically, Kazuki's life was cut short by an accident, leading their family into disarray. His father turned to alcohol and began mistreating Yuuji and his mother. Yuuji witnessed his mother's abuse at the hands of his father, feeling helpless as she apologized repeatedly while cowering in fear. When she could no longer endure living with his father, the two of them decided to leave and start anew. Finally, away from her husband, she began treating Yuuji like a typical son. Despite their financial struggles, Yuuji cherished her home-cooked meals and felt like he was in paradise. However, their peace was shattered when a year later, Yuuji's father tracked them down. They both were filled with dread as his father demanded him to fetch alcohol. Following orders, he returned to witness his mother being harassed by his pathetic father. Trying to intervene only resulted in him being badly hurt. Fueled by rage, he resolved to end his father's abuse. Remembering his sister's question, "Which hand will you use to kill a man?" he acted without hesitation, raising his right hand and striking his father, causing him to collapse to the ground. He consoles his mom, who asks him how far they should flee this time. She instructs him to leave first and assures him she'll follow later, entrusting him with her entire life savings. With no hesitation, Yuuji obeys his mother's instructions and heads to the train station. However, hours passed and he starts hearing ambulance sirens. He decides to return home and saw people carrying his father's body. Upon entering the house, he realizes he'll never be able to speak to his mother again as she committed suicide. From that moment, his consciousness begins to fade. After waking up in a hospital, Yuuji finds only a note from his mother asking for forgiveness and expressing regret for her actions. With no family and nowhere to turn, Yuuji's predicament deteriorates as he's taken in by another psychopath named Rei, the mysterious man he met at his house the other day, who dresses him as his late sister. Despite the odd circumstances, one fateful night, one of Rei's bodyguards attempted to harass Yuuji, but met his demise at Yuuji's hands. Rei, astonished by Yuuji's resolve, praised him for defending himself. When Yuuji asked if Rei was angry, Rei assured him that he would mold him into a strong tool. He then sent Yuuji to his military compound for training. His days were consumed with training to become the most ruthless soldier, with Rei favoring him as his top student. However, this only fueled further bullying from the other kids. Amidst the hostility, one person stood out as a beacon of kindness. Marlene, a girl with no memory of her past. She showed Yuuji compassion, sharing her food and offering support. Yuuji felt she was the only person he could trust. Rei, also known as Oslo on the island, trained Yuuji extensively, even using real knives. He instilled in Yuuji the belief that survival meant killing before being killed, convincing him that everyone, even his own family, was his enemy. Oslo manipulated Yuuji into believing he was his sole ally. As the day of the final exam arrived, Yuuji's task was to confront and defeat the person standing before him, who turned out to be Marlene. Despite his internal struggle, he engaged in the fight, using his superior agility to overpower her. However, haunting memories of his mother's suffering at the hands of his father flooded Yuuji's mind, causing his mental state to unravel during the match. Taking advantage of his vulnerability, Marlene gained the upper hand and emerged victorious. In the aftermath, Marlene visited Yuuji in his jail cell, expressing remorse for hurting him and tending to his wounds. She continued to show him kindness, offering food and companionship, until her graduation day when she bid him farewell. Sadly, it was the last time Yuuji ever saw or spoke to Marlene. The nurse later delivered the heartbreaking news of Marlene's passing after she began her first job. Yuuji pondered whether he could have saved Marlene by resorting to violence instead of kindness. After graduating, he embarked on his first assassination mission, disguising himself as a maid to infiltrate a wealthy man's room. Yuuji successfully completed his task. His string of successful assassinations continued until the CIRS breached Oslo's residence. Law enforcement eradicated obstacles, nearly trapping Oslo. Upon discovering an underground passage behind a steel door, Asako found only a white-haired child seated inside. Yuuji's white hair fell off, revealing his true identity. Asako took Yuuji under her wing, and they settled into their home deep in the woods. Initially, Yuuji's days were spent lost in his thoughts, and their early days together weren't easy. It was during this time that he met JB, Asako's friend and colleague. As they conversed, Asako decided to bathe Yuuji, only to discover numerous bruises and scars covering his body. Moved by his condition, Asako offered him food, realizing he was malnourished. However, their meal was interrupted when Yuuji impulsively killed a fly on the table, triggering traumatic memories and causing him to vomit. As time passed, Asako and Yuuji formed a bond. She gifted him a dog named John, which brought him joy despite his troubled past. Asako began training Yuuji, teaching him valuable skills such as agility, strength, and wisdom through reading books. Yuuji learned that Asako worked for CIRS, an anti-terrorism organization with Japanese-American ties. The following day, Asako taught Yuuji how to shoot accurately, promising him a reward if he hit the target. To his delight, he succeeded, and upon returning home, he discovered a large case on the table. Asako encouraged him to open it, revealing a gun inside. Excited, Yuuji eagerly tested it out. Asako then took Yuuji hunting, but he struggled to kill a deer, haunted by his past traumas. Understanding his turmoil, Asako reassured him, acknowledging that he was just a kid and allowed him to be vulnerable. The next day, Yuuji was startled by John's barking inside their house. Expecting Asako's return, he was horrified to find a bear had broken in. Rushing to grab his gun, he returned to see the bear carrying a lifeless John in its mouth. Despite aiming at the bear, he struggled to pull the trigger. As he knelt on the floor, mourning John's loss, Yuuji resolved to track down the bear and retrieve his beloved companion, whom he considered family. In his pursuit, he encountered the bear again but accidentally fired the gun elsewhere, prompting the bear to attack him. Armed only with a knife, Yuuji fought back, haunted by traumatic memories and encouraged by Asako's voice in his head. Ultimately, he managed to injure the bear, but was devastated to see the bear's cubs feeding on John. Filled with despair, Yuuji questioned why his dog had become prey for the bear, grieving as he witnessed the gruesome scene. In a moment of anguish, he pulled the trigger on his gun. Returning to the house with John's collar, Yuuji was met by Asako, who inquired about the bear. Unable to bring himself to kill it, Yuuji broke down. Feeling useless, however, Asako reassures him and comforts him in his vulnerability. After burying John's collar, Yuuji expressed his desire to overcome his cowardice and protect his loved ones like Asako. She acknowledged his past trauma but emphasized her teachings, restricting his use of lethal force to critical situations. Furthermore, she set guidelines for him to follow, including not being permitted to kill unless instructed and needing to save 5 people to earn an honorable death. In her final words of advice, Asako urged Yuuji to become a man capable of pulling the trigger without hesitation, not for his own sake, but to save others. Years passed and Asako's health begins to deteriorate. One day as she was resting, Yuuji received an urgent work call meant for her. Since she is unable to fulfill the task, he took it upon himself to handle it in her absence. Another time, Yuuji found himself caught in an argument between JB and Asako after JB discovered that Yuuji has been completing Asako's jobs. Despite JB's concerns that Asako was treating him similarly to how Oslo did, Yuuji assured her that he willingly took on the responsibility as a way of repaying Asako's kindness. When Asako offered him the opportunity to obtain a work license, he eagerly accepted. Yuuji traveled to America to enroll in a naval training academy, where he befriended Danny and encountered the stern army captain Agnes, who, despite her reputation for being strict, showed him favoritism due to his connection to Asako. During training, Yuuji was mistakenly accused of falsifying his marksmanship report because he was too accurate a sniper, but Agnes intervened, telling the sergeant that Yuuji has exceptional marksmanship talent. Assigned to a combat platoon, Yuuji participated in a final exam alongside Danny, Millie, and Robert. While trekking through the forest, Danny spotted a large bird suitable for food. Yuuji volunteered to shoot it, but afterward, he experienced a visceral reaction and vomited, realizing that he had overestimated his tolerance for taking life. One evening, while resting, Yuuji sensed the approach of enemies, prompting the group to prepare for an ambush. Despite feeling nauseous every time he fired at the enemy, Yuuji's determination to fight remained strong. Encouraged by his comrades, he resolved to push through and join them in the counterattack. Closing his eyes momentarily, Yuuji reflected on the camaraderie he shared with his fellow fighters, Danny, who considered him a friend, Millie, who relied on him and trusts him, Robert, who stands up for him and supports him, and Edward, who shows him respect. With renewed clarity, Yuuji recognized the enemy not as human beings, but as adversaries clad in green. Faced with the choice of letting his friends perish or taking action, Yuuji opened his eyes with a newfound resolve. He pulled the trigger, eliminating one enemy after another. Determined to prevent further loss among those he cherished, Yuuji vowed to consider anyone who threatened them as his enemy. Over the following 2 months, he adapted to the rigors of the battlefield, continuing to fight alongside his comrades until their mission concluded. Upon returning home, Yuuji received a warm welcome from Asako, experiencing a sense of happiness and purpose he hadn't felt before. Despite lingering uncertainty about his future, he pledged his unwavering loyalty to Asako, dedicating himself to her cause. In his final training mission, he rescued Chizuru in Vancouver, marking the end of an era and the last time he saw Danny's comforting smile. Upon returning to Japan, Yuuji learns that Asako's life is slipping away. JB informs him that she has been drifting in and out of consciousness since the day she was struck by a high-caliber rifle shot, leading to complications. Entering her room, Yuuji finds her lying in bed and takes her hand, tearfully asking if she's going to die. With a nod, Asako acknowledges the inevitable. Tears streaming down his face, Yuuji implores her not to leave him. Asako softly laughs at his display of emotion, remarks that men shouldn't cry so easily. Despite her lighthearted comment, Yuuji poured his heart out, expressing how Asako had given his life purpose and how unfair it was for her to be slipping away. Refusing to accept her fate, Yuuji struggled with the impending loss, realizing he would once again be left without someone he cherished deeply. Contemplating a future without Asako, Yuuji grappled with the overwhelming sense of helplessness. As JB relayed the grim prognosis that Asako likely wouldn't survive the day, Yuuji remained by Asako's bedside, listening to her speak of stars and sharing tender moments. As she grew weary, she asked for permission to rest, and Yuuji granted her request, wishing her sweet dreams as she drifted off. Tragically, she never woke up again. Following the loss of his mentor, Yuuji grappled with loneliness in their once shared home. To distract himself from dwelling in his grief, Yuji relocated to JB's residence, seeking companionship and purpose, recalling Asako's counsel to explore new interests and broaden his horizons. He embarked on a journey of self-discovery. Along the way, he discovered the importance of embracing his youth and seizing every opportunity for growth. Upon returning home and paying respects at Asako's grave, he expressed his desire to experience life as an ordinary student by attending an ordinary school. Yuji's desire to experience the ordinary life of a student is fulfilled when he is welcomed by Chizuru, the principal and teacher of Mahama Academy. Upon his arrival, he discovers that the academy has only 6 students, himself included. Among his new classmates is Sashi, a freshman who typically dresses as a maid and diligently follows instructions in hopes of being seen as a good girl. He also encounters Hammerne, a third-year student, who spends time with Makina, a playful freshman known for her innocence. As Yuji explores the school's halls, he hears a voice emanating from a nearby room. Upon entering, he is greeted by a blonde girl named Miss Haru, a second-year student who initially reacts hysterically to his presence. Lastly, he encounters Yumiko, a reserved girl sitting by the classroom window, whose chilly reception includes an attempt to attack him with a cutter. As weeks go by, Yuji finds himself forming close bonds with each of his classmates, despite the unique challenges they each face stemming from their childhood traumas. Eventually, the weight of these experiences prompts him to take a leave of absence from school to seek respite in his hometown. During this time, a childhood memory resurfaces, revealing a connection between Yuji and a young Sashi. He recalls a time when she addressed him as Yuyuko, a name from his past that evokes memories of his late sister Kazuki, who had forbidden their childhood friendship. Returning to his dormitory, Yuji is taken aback to find Hammerne waiting for him in his room, prompting him to question how she gained entry. Undeterred, she persists in her desire to become his girlfriend, employing persuasive tactics until Yuji relents and agrees to enter into a relationship with her. However, he asks why she's so persistent about being together with him. She tearfully reveals a truth she's long kept hidden. To Yuji's astonishment, she unexpectedly mentions details about his late sister, Kazuki. Yuji listens as Hammerne discloses that she is the sole survivor of the tragic incident that claimed his sister's life. She gives him the diary she wrote during the incident, and he begins to read it. 6 years ago, Kazuki's club was returning from a camping trip and met with a devastating accident, sending their bus tumbling off a cliff. Amidst the chaos, Kazuki and Hammerne became friends. After more than a week of survival, some students passed away, and the rest got weaker. Their teacher went off alone, telling them he would bring back the rescue. Their teacher returned, but Kazuki and Hammerne discovered that he and the club's captain secretly butchered and fed the corpses of the deceased members to everyone. Seeing this, Kazuki and Hammerne decided to escape, but then the others found out they knew about the terrible things happening. Starving and sick, the rest of the club members, who weren't thinking clearly, started chasing after them. Hammerne was really scared and almost gave up, but Kazuki promised to keep her safe. Kazuki helped Hammerne escape by giving her a map to leave the mountains. Then, Kazuki sacrificed herself by acting as a distraction for the others, so Hammerne could get away. After escaping the forest alone, Hammerne's life was filled with nightmares and guilt for surviving. When Yuji arrived, she saw him as her punishment for leaving her friend Kazuki behind. Hammerne even asked Yuji to end her life as punishment, feeling responsible for Kazuki's death. But Yuji refused and told her to stay with him instead, insisting that she leave for him. A few days later, Yuji received a new sniping mission from Division 1 to take down a terrorist named Ethan Glow. As he prepared for the mission and spotted his target, he realized it was Heath Oslo, the same man that trained him to become an assassin when he was a child. As though he knows he is being targeted, Oslo looks in Yuji's direction and mutters some words. Yuji was shocked and panicked. Despite his efforts, the mission failed, and he was captured by CIS forces. The news reported that Oslo's terrorist organization attacked the embassy, and Yuji was suspected of involvement based on surveillance footage. The CIRS then showed Yuji a hologram of Kazuki, which left him bewildered since he believed his sister was already dead. She reveals that her brain tissue was used to create a computer system called the Thanatos system. Yuuji tests her identity by asking her a question about herself, which she answers correctly, confirming she is his sister. When he questions why she didn't reach out to him earlier, she apologizes, citing her condition as the reason. Despite his confusion, Yuuji pledges to assist her in any way she needs. She discloses Oslo's plan to smuggle a nuclear bomb. Kazuki explains that Oslo is targeting her because, as Thanatos, she can monitor global transmissions and infiltrate systems worldwide. Yuuji realizes the gravity of the situation but learns they can't seek government aid as Oslo is already in negotiations with them. Oslo demands 20% of the Thanatos system in exchange for retrieving Yuuji. Yuuji learns that he's a crucial tool for Oslo, as he's the only successful product of the DuPont project, an experiment to create super soldiers. Kazuki reveals Oslo's involvement in the bus accident, Sashi's parents' deaths, and the other girl's traumas. She tells Yuuji to assassinate Oslo, but also tries to apologize. However, Yuuji interrupts her, expressing his desire to hear no more apologies and focusing solely on dealing with Oslo. Yuuji finds himself restrained and unconscious in the Ikegaya holding facility by the CIRS. The guard informs him of his upcoming transfer to Akasaka for trial in the Na-terrorist attack case. However, during the journey, Oslo's men ambush the vehicle, kidnapping Yuuji and attaching a bomb to his wrist set to detonate if his pulse weakens, with Oslo holding the key. Suddenly, someone shoots at their vehicle and throws smokescreen. Sashi appears to rescue Yuuji, and he's relieved to see her. He warns her about the bomb bracelet as she frees him. They are later joined by Hammer Nei and Miss Haru, and as they flee in a truck, they are pursued by enemies. During the chase, they come under attack from a helicopter, and Yuuji loses consciousness while the girls shield him. Upon waking, Yuuji finds himself in the company of Justin, a familiar face from his army days. Soon after, Zoe Graham, a CIA agent, enters the room. She reveals herself as the daughter of Paul Graham, one of Yuuji's past assassination targets during his time working for Oslo. She points the gun at him, but spares him when he vows to settle things with Oslo. Yuuji is overwhelmed with emotion as he reunites with his sister, Kazuki, realizing she's still alive. Kazuki presents him with a choice: either come with her or confront Oslo. Despite the temptation to stay with his sister, Yuuji decides to pursue Oslo. He instructs everyone else to escape on the ship, expressing gratitude for their rescue and promising that he won't die. With Kazuki's intel on Oslo's whereabouts, Yuuji prepares for their showdown. JB tries to dissuade him. She points out that he is not strong enough to fight Oslo. She further reveals that even Asako couldn't defeat Oslo in their past encounter, which ultimately led to her death. However, Yuuji remains resolute, fueled by vengeance as he now knows that Oslo is responsible for Asako's death. Infiltrating Oslo's ship, Yuuji stealthily eliminates Oslo's men one by one, swiftly navigating through the chaos. He employs cunning tactics, using a decoy to lure his enemies before striking decisively. As he closes in on Oslo, Yuuji encounters DuPont, a genetically engineered adversary cloned from his own DNA who challenges him to a duel to determine supremacy. DuPont offers him strength boosters, but Yuuji declines, opting to rely on his own abilities. Enraged, DuPont engages him in combat, injecting Yuuji with enhancers to level the playing field. Yuuji retaliates, but DuPont swiftly draws his gun and opens fire. Reacting quickly, Yuuji throws his own gun at DuPont's face, landing a powerful punch afterward. Despite being shot at, Yuuji flips his weapon and returns fire. DuPont is struck and falls to the ground, but Yuuji hesitates to finish him off. Seizing the opportunity, DuPont injects himself with another booster, evading Yuuji's subsequent attack. DuPont then sends Yuuji flying and continues to rain down punches on him relentlessly. It's clear that DuPont has the upper hand in terms of strength. As Yuuji's energy starts to fade and he struggles to keep up, he decides to inject himself with another booster dose. This sudden surge of strength allows him to swiftly launch another attack on DuPont, aiming for his weak spot. Yuuji then grabs his knife and engages in a fierce brawl with DuPont. Yuuji sustains numerous injuries from DuPont's rapid movements, but a memory of Asako encouraging him to keep fighting flashes in his mind. Drawing strength from this memory, he rises to his feet and resumes the fight with renewed determination. As DuPont moves in for another attack, Yuuji seizes the opportunity and manages to stab him in the torso, bringing the battle to a victorious end. Yuuji barges into Oslo's room as he prepares for the final boss fight. Oslo, on the other hand, attempts to reminisce about old times. Ignoring his words, Yuuji wastes no time and lunges forward with his knife, but Oslo evades the attack. Oslo then reveals the bomb strapped to Yuji's wrist, set to detonate in 5 minutes. He explains that if Yuji can retrieve the key from him, he'll gain control over the bomb's fate. Oslo wields Asako's sword and launches an assault on Yuji, delivering several slashes and kicks in the intense confrontation. Oslo attempts to persuade Yuji to return to him, but Yuji's strength begins to wane, and he swings his knife aimlessly. Oslo, regretting his failure to capture Yuji alive, thrusts the sword into Yuji's stomach and fatally injures him. Despite vomiting blood, Yuji remains resolute. He pushes forward, closer to Oslo, asserting that he doesn't need a weapon to kill. Grabbing a ballpoint pen, he stabs Oslo in the neck. As Oslo convulses from the fatal wound, Yuji reminds him that he's the one who taught him that move and that they will soon reunite in the afterlife. Using Asako's sword as support, Yuji struggles to find his way out, his vision blurred and weakened by his injuries. Suddenly, he sees an image of Asako urging him to live. Recalling his promise to his friends not to give up, Yuji summons all his remaining strength to make it out alive. Determined to return home, he pushes forward. But just as he reaches outside, the ship explodes. Fast forward 2 years later, and we learn that Yuji miraculously survived the explosion. He now resides on some private island and lives happily ever after with his harem. Thanks for watching. Click on this video and I'll see you soon.